Hello, this is my Eternity bonsai. Probably ranks in one of the top 3 fun planes to fly for me. This poor little thing has seen a few hard times. As you can see, there's been lots of repairs and there's nicks and cracks and chunks out of it all over the place, but it still flies alright. But I'm thinking to do a rebuild, a second bonsai, since they're so cheap, about $25 or something. And the next one I'm going to flash it up a little bit, and it's going to be built with the aim of being competitive in a race. Not a super competitive race, but more competitive than the standard build. So it's going to be sleeker and smoother and slipperier and more powerful and a little bit more rigid and sturdy as a wing than this standard build was. Until now I've been using one of these for my FPV, and this works pretty well, but it really suffers. The picture is quite bad when you're looking into a cloudy, like an overcast day, and you try and look at the sun. You just can't see anything too much, and just generally suffers in low light. And it's obviously not very streamlined either, so that is one thing that I've really been looking to change. This was not available at the time that I built my first bonsai, but I'm really glad that they are now because they're the perfect fit. They're just so small. These also are getting more cheaper and available. This is a 25 milliwatt video transmitter, so it's a pretty good fit, I think, for bonsai as well. And obviously I don't really want to use this antenna, but fortunately this video transmitter has a sort of a detachable clip there, so I'm going to actually use one of these which has a clip on it, just so that I can have a cloverleaf antenna. And thinking I might just cut off the front of the wing and replace it with my own creation at the front. Not entirely sure how it's all going to work out yet, but what I will do is use some of this laminating film or covering film and put that all over the wing to keep it nice and stiff and streamlined. And I did a little bit of a test with this on my Texumo to see if it sticks, and it does not stick on the standard surface. Like if I just tried to stick it on there, it wouldn't stick at all. It just falls right off. But if you take the sandpaper to the surface and you give it a good sanding, the covering film will stick, and you also get the nice side effect that it becomes a little bit smoother too, because there are actually sort of little bumps and dimples on the surface, which would be nice to have them smoothed out. So that will kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and it will make it look a little bit unique, because it'll all be sort of a purple colour like that instead of just being the standard blue. Okay, it's about a week later now. I haven't actually been working on this that much because I'm waiting for some FR4 to make the motor mount and the front piece from. In the meantime, I've just made a couple of prototype pieces like this out of acrylic, just to sort of fit them in and get the sizes right. So I'll show you that in a little bit more detail inside later on, but that's the reason why I've cut this piece out of the front and why I've cut all the way through at that location as well. I'm going to put the servos on top of the wings, so they're going to go in like this, and that should leave a little bit of space under the wing, and that is going to be where I'm going to put this. If the servos were coming all the way through here, it would kind of be awkward positioning. I wouldn't be able to do this. But this is a 6mm diameter carbon rod. It's probably a little bit overkill really for this, but I have a couple of them sitting around, so I thought I might as well use them. So I'm just going to stick that together next.
Alright, it's a few days later again now, and I have the spar stuck in there. Just stuck that in with Gorilla Glue. And my FR4 has arrived. I got this from Banggood this time instead of Hobby King. I don't like the yellow colour too much. I might paint this to make it look a little bit nicer. But the quality of the stuff is pretty decent, and for some reason it cut really nicely. It just turned out really good. But I have not stuck that proper one together yet, so I'm just about to do that. But I'll show you what I was talking about with these pieces here. Although it looks a little bit like a light bulb, it's not a light bulb. This is the motor mount, so this just goes on like that. So if you look at it from here, you can see the wing section, or the profile of the wing, or whatever you call it. And it's going to clip on to there. This one, this is my second prototype. I had this other one here, which I'm just sort of incrementally improving them a little bit. It's still not quite fitting properly, but that one should fit okay. So it's just sort of cylinder here, and I'm thinking to wrap some tape around there just to seal it up and make it nice and streamlined. And it's the exact same size, the same diameter as the motor, so airflow wise it should just be a nice straight line for the air to come along that way. And on the top it's going to be, I can't quite get this in the angle that I want to, but this line from the top here is just a straight line that basically just continues onto the wing there. So at this point the wing is at its highest point, and it comes down just a little bit before this line here takes over and makes it just perfectly straight for the rest of the back part. And these holes, it's a little bit hard to see, isn't it? These holes need to be moved a little bit forward. So just a few little things that I've learnt from making this one that I will fix, that I've already fixed in this one. And at the front, this piece is just a construction-wise, it's quite a bit simpler than that motor mount. It's just 4 plates. 2 of them are exactly the same. I made this one wrong. You can see there's a little bit cut out here. There's a little bit of a lower piece that's supposed to be on this side, so that the plugs for the run cam will be there where it's lower, and there'll be a little bit more room for them. And I had to move this hole up and forwards a little bit. It's just sitting in there, so it's where the run cam's going to mount. And this should be pretty obvious where that goes. It just slots into there, and there's a gap just big enough to fit that there. And this section at the front of the nose is kind of flat in this area. It's starting to slope upwards towards the tip, but it's overall it's relatively flat. So I'm just going to glue this in. This one, by the way, I'm thinking not to glue this one, so that's why I have these holes. I should be able to attach this and have it easily detachable later on just by using 2 screws to clamp it onto the wing from the top and bottom. But this one I don't think it's going to work out quite so easily, so I'm going to glue it. And this is also the place that's going to be taking crash impacts, so yeah, I think I'll just glue it to make it all a bit more solid. There are a couple of slots in there which I was thinking to use to put a battery strap around, but the battery strap, they're actually a little bit thick. They have a bit of thickness to them, so when you put them in there they sort of make a space that the battery would fit into nicely by itself. Suddenly the battery doesn't fit in very well. But I found that this battery, I've got to cut out a little bit here, but when I put this in, I'm sort of forcing it a bit, but it sits in there not quite nicely, probably nicely enough to fly without actually being strapped in. So what I decided to do for this new version, just sort of a last minute thing actually, this piece is the front plate there, and focus, yep. So on this one this time I've put a couple of little hooks on each side, and those are going to be for rubber bands, or 1 rubber band, and then this is going to go here. So those 2 hooks at the front, the rubber band can go from here to there to there, and that should be enough not to hold the battery in while you're flying, but just enough to stop it from flying out in a crash. I think should be good enough. That's the main purpose of it anyway. And this hole, which unfortunately seems to be right on top of those spars, this hole will go into the hole on this piece at the bottom, so it's going to be underneath there, and it should be able to hold this top piece in, because I will probably glue it as well, but I'm not sure if glue would be quite enough to hold it in just on its own. So I think a screw going into that solid piece at the bottom would be a little bit more sturdy way to hold it in. So apart from that, the other parts are pretty much the same there. By the way, that cylinder piece at the back here, those plates at first glance might look all the same, but they're not. They had to be actually quite different. The one at the back was very simple. That's just for the motor to attach to. The one in the middle needs a little bit of a cutaway at the bottom for the main piece at the bottom to slot into. like that. And the reason these holes are larger here is so that you can get a screw into that hole from the back, because the motor is going to be here, and you're also going to need some way to tighten that motor. So this larger hole here will let you put the screw in and then put a little Allen key in after it to tighten the screw up. So I had to think of that. And then this one is different again. This is the final one closest to the front of the plane, and that had to be have some little slots to fit this piece in there like that. So if everything goes well, when I glue this one up, this one will be perfect. So I have all the FR4 parts glued up now, and I'm pleased to say that this third prototype, or this third revision of my CAD drawings, is working perfectly well. Fits exactly where I wanted it to. The holes are now just in front of that spar. It all fits nicely without any of the pieces bending when I slide it on. Fits nice and secure. It's pretty you could probably fly like that actually, even without having a screw in there. It just fits perfectly right on. There's about 1 degree of down thrust, which is not what I was planning. I was planning to just keep it like perfectly perpendicular to the bottom of the wing. But apparently a little bit of down thrust on a flying wing is not a problem, so that should be alright. And the front also fits in here quite nicely, and with the slightly repositioned holes here, I can actually get at the hole without having to squash the foam down like that too much. I took some photos that we can just have a quick look at here. So that is the bottom of the motor mount, and looking at it from the back, you can see, well, you can't quite see from this view, but the total height of the motor mount is only the same height as the wing is. The weight of that piece is 6 grams, weight of this piece is 8 grams. Unfortunately, this little tab here to hook the rubber band on broke immediately the first time I used it, so I made this one and I just glued together 3 tabs in there like that, and that one is quite strong, didn't break. That's with it painted and glued in, and the Gorilla Glue that I used puffed up around here, so I had to sort of cut a gouge back to get my rubber band in there, but it was actually quite good because it means that the rubber band is kind of stuck in there tightly, so it's not going to just fall out on its own. That's from the front. And I put all of the rest of the stuff in this little bay at the back. This is the original bay that you find on the bonsai, but I've cut it out and moved it to the bottom. I think this is the original size here, and then I've actually cut a little bit back there because I wanted to use the FlySky IA6B receiver. Originally I was thinking to use one of those smaller ones, the 3-channel ones, but from using those in the past, I found that they don't have very good range. Sort of like about 200 meters is pushing it even, I found, in the wrong orientation anyway. But the IA6B has always performed quite well for me, and it has diversity like this, so I wanted to use one of those. It's a little bit big with the case on, so I took the case off and just sort of shoved everything in there. This ESC does not have a beck, so I'm using a separate beck there, and the VTX fits in, antenna fits in there. I had to cut the bay a little bit bigger, as you can see there, and also at the front there's a little bit there so that I could actually use the plug-in connectors for the pins instead of having to solder stuff on like that. But it all fitted in there quite nicely, and it's perfectly flush with the top level of the wing. That is how the battery fits in at the front, so that's what I was saying about the rubber band going sort of from there to there to there, like that. This does not need to be connected to anything, battery alarm wise, because, well, at least if you're flying FPV, this camera has an on-screen display showing you the voltage anyway, so it's quite nice that you don't need an extra battery alarm there. And then the battery will just plug into there, like that.
So the motor finally arrived after about a month or so, and it's all ready to go. I didn't take videos at every step, it was getting a bit tedious to be honest, but I actually changed the motor for this Cobra 1407 3500 kV. When I saw they had a gold one, I thought, oh, that'll go well with my Pimp colour scheme. And I also wanted something a little bit smaller and lighter than the 1806 that I had at the beginning of this video, just to be a little bit slimmer around here. And also with 3500 kV, it should be able to still even when it's going quite fast, it still should be giving decent thrust. But to do that, it's going to be a 4-inch prop, because this motor is probably going to be struggling a little bit with a 5-inch prop. So that's the power side of it. And I've laminated it with the purple laminate, as you can see, and it's all nice and slim. Cut just a little bit of exposure here for the hot parts, which is going to be here. The FPV transmitter is under there, but I have some airflow coming in, hopefully coming in from here, and there's a little bit of a hole there at the back where it can get out, so maybe, yeah, hopefully it's not going to be too hot. It's only a 25 milliwatt one though, so should be right. And then the antenna's just sort of poking in there. I've sort of scalloped out these bits here on the top and the bottom, so that when you look at it from the back, around about where the propeller is, they come into quite a thin edge. So I'm hoping that will maybe make it a little bit quieter, but also just a little bit more efficient, perhaps. At least that's the theory. On the end, the trailing edge of the elevons, I've put a little carbon spar, so it just sort of makes the edge a little bit sharper than it was, because it sort of cuts off rather abruptly there in a sort of a flat edge. So this will give it some strength and also make the end a little bit more slippery, I think. I don't know, maybe it won't make any difference. So I've painted those FR4 parts, obviously, and I'm using 2 bolts at the back to hold that on. This one here, once I got it glued on, I don't think I will need this screw, to be honest, but just to be on the safe side, and since I made the holes for it, I will, you know, put a bolt through there. So there it is, all FPV capable, very streamlined. I don't think you could get it too much more streamlined than that. You've sort of got to have this sticking out somewhere. Anyway, we have a little bit of sun now, so I'm thinking I might take this for a fly.
Actually, after saying I don't need one of these battery alarms, if I'm flying at line of sight, I still do kind of need one, so I put one on there just for this first battery. I think I'll fly line of sight. It's quite windy today, so it's probably going to get blown around a bit, but let's see what happens. It's about 30% throttle. Feels like enough to cruise like that. Wind is coming from there. Oh, maybe we do need winglets. Maybe I just need to give it a bit more speed, eh? Throw it more into the wind this time too. Okay, it's a bloody handful. It's not impossible to control, but very near impossible. That's going to be a bit of a bummer, isn't it? The camera's going to take all of the dirt straight away. I'll leave that in there. It'll give me a little bit more nose weight, just in case that was part of the problem. Ooh. That's a little bit better actually, but still, by golly, it's tricky. No, there's no... That was lucky, kind of. No damage on that crash and tumble, by the way. Seems to be fine. If this doesn't work, then I'll put winglets on. Alright, I couldn't bear to sully this beautiful creature with the standard winglets, so I quickly whipped up some balsa ones and covered them with the same laminate and put them on. Now let's see how this goes. We lost the sunlight, unfortunately, but I was going to say we lost the wind as well, but now it's coming back. Whatever. I think that was just my fault. Very pitchy, but it's much more controllable. Feels tail heavy, of all things. That's about 60% throttle. It's pitching up and down a lot. Very pitchy. But at least I can control it. And it's a lot easier to keep your orientation too. Which is one thing I was noticing while I was flying it just before. I couldn't tell which way it was facing. This is probably about 30% throttle there, but going downwind, so nothing spectacular. I'll see if I can do a bit of full throttle right about here. Whoa! Okay, that pitch rates need to be reduced a lot, and I think it's tail heavy, so let's just come in for a bit of a landing and fix that up. Right, CG is about a centimetre further forward now. Let's put some money on the bottom. Okay, pitch rates are a lot better. I think roll rate needs to come down a bit now. Yeah. Very touchy and roll, so it's tracking a lot better though. Yeah, it's not a terrible glide. Oh, it's still... It seems to get more pitchy with speed. It's about half throttle. It's pretty good. It's full throttle. It's not spectacular, really. Glide. It's waggling quite a bit. It almost feels like it's still tail heavy. It's a lot faster than my other bonsai, but it's not doesn't track as well, which is a little bit unexpected because I thought, you know, making it smoother and stuff would help. It was a bit windier than when I normally fly bonsais though. Yeah, the speed, when I raise the throttle up high, the speed is not really that spectacular, but it's a lot faster at just a cruising speed of like 40% throttle, which is what I am all this time here. That's about 50% throttle maybe, and it gets pitchy from that point on, I think. Let's try a full throttle pass. Woo! Yeah, it's pretty fast. It's gliding. It's gliding. It's a lot better glide slope than the other bonsai. Wow. Oh, the propper's stopped. Throttle on. Yeah, I think it's tail heavy still. Jeez. It's going to cost another 50-cent piece maybe. Pretty good vertical. Gliding. Just gliding. Oh, it's a much better glider than the other one. Yeah, that's quite nice. I mean, for a bonsai it's a decent glide, but for anything else this would be a bit of a crappy glide, maybe. Oh, alright. Okay, feeling a little bit more comfortable with it now. See if we can bring it down a bit lower. It's still very touchy on pitch. Yeah, I'm gonna have to change my pitch again. Oh man, I was gonna catch it, but it's too fast. So after fiddling around with the rates and the trims and everything for a bit, I did a few batteries flying FPV the next day, and I have to admit, overall it's not quite as much fun as the normal bonsai that I have, although it was a bit windy, so you know there is that sort of throws you off a little bit. The FPV video feed was not quite as good. Could be because there's a carbon spar going right along underneath the lobes of the antenna, which probably doesn't really help, so I couldn't really get too far away. The video picture is better, of course, in lighting than the CMOS camera that I was using on my other bonsai. I get around about the same flight time, but in general I can go a little bit faster. I was getting about 7 minutes with this, and I was not really sparing the horses. I was doing probably about 60-70% throttle most of the time, with the occasional 100% throttle burst and no gliding except for a little tiny bit at the end just when I was landing. Overall, the main issue is just that it's a little bit unstable. In pitch, a little bit still. I had to use quite a bit of expo. This is the first time I've used expo settings in my radio for a plane and kept them. Usually I try them and I don't like them, but for this I had to keep them. And the problem is that it's just very pitchy and even more unstable in roll. So it's just hard to keep it level in one roll attitude. So as a result of that, I couldn't really do any of the fun things that I normally do with my bonsai, which is flying very low down the road between the fences. And also with my other bonsai, I can quite easily fly underneath a piece of rope that's stretched across the road to stop the cows from coming along. It's probably about 60 centimeters off the ground. And with the other bonsai, I can easily get under that, even with the not quite so good picture from the other camera. As long as there's not much wind, of course, that's a requirement. But in general, I just didn't really feel in as much control with this, so I didn't feel like getting very close to the ground with it.
Well, just to make a little summary, I've flown, I think, 6 batteries through this now, and I don't think it was worth all that effort that I put in to build it like this. It's a little bit hard to make a direct comparison because it's spring here and it's gotten rather windy lately, so I haven't been able to fly it on a windless day, which is when I normally fly my other bonsai. But it does not fly any better than the normal one, and I think it's pretty safe to say that it actually flies quite a bit worse. It's just very unstable in roll is the main thing. Yeah, that's the main thing. It's not, I guess it's not too bad otherwise, but it's definitely no better than the normal build. So in that respect, yeah, I would say don't bother about doing any of this fancy laminating and sanding and all that kind of stuff. What I do really like though is that it's quite sturdy. It's been into 3 trees now at quite some speed each time, and the only thing that really happened was one of the winglets got pulled off, and that was it. And I did not catch it on camera, unfortunately, but I also pile drived it into the ground straight downwards at about 70% throttle, and nothing happened. Oh, a little bit of this laminate lifted up just there, so I just tacked it back down with some super glue. But as far as the the frame around the camera here, nothing happened at all, which is quite good. I was very happy to see that. So the sturdiness in general, and especially the sturdiness of this, I really like. And I also like the fact that this motor mount, battery mount thing, it's just so easy to get in and out to swap a battery. So to put that back in, it's real simple, and then you just clip that over the thing and you're done. So yeah, I really like that. So this front section, I probably would do that again actually, with the FR4 parts and the CNCing and all that kind of thing. But at the back, I wouldn't bother with a fancy motor mount like that, and I don't think I would bother trying to squeeze everything in here under a nice flat surface either. That probably wasn't worth it. So anyway, I hope that was a little bit interesting, and thanks for watching. See you next time.